Welcome to Pensari Basketball. My name is Robert, and grab your coffee. We're going for an hour. This is not a call-in show, but we are going to talk about some cool stuff today. We're going to talk about Becky Hammon making a bit of a controversial stir on Raptors Twitter, and I'm going to give you my take on why I have no problem with it and compare it to how Nick Nurse responded to a very similar question when he was asked, and just give you a perspective on what I think was right and wrong about each, and talk about a very unique thing that Scottie Barnes is doing and how it is really encouraging to see as a Toronto fan to see him embracing Toronto the way he is. And we're going to talk about a key fundamental difference between Kawhi Leonard and Giannis Antetokounmpo in terms of how they dealt with a very similar situation, and generally open this up to a broader point, which is that winning is a habit and a talent, and some people have it and some people don't. So, and today, in lieu of our intro, as we wait for this chat to populate, instead of giving you my Pendants messaging at the end of the live, I'm going to give it to you now. So this is going to be our new intro for a couple of times this week, just to introduce people to the idea that, yes, Pendants is coming in 2 weeks. It's a really big part of my life. And if you're interested in attending, definitely check the link in the description below. We will start in 2 minutes. If you don't want to see this, come back in 2 minutes.
Back when you fake like that, head out of the game, I don't play that fact. Once you let me go, no, you never come back. I'ma be the best that you never had. I'ma kick back when you fake like that, head out of the game, I don't play that fact. Once you let me go, no, you never come back. I'ma be the best that you never had. I'ma kick, 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 I'ma be the best that you never had. Rumba pa pa, rumba pa pa, see I got it. Rumba pa pa, rumba pa pa, no you want it. I don't flex, I'm success. Effortless, I'm like a rumba pa pa, rumba pa pa, see I got it. I don't flex, I'm success. I don't flex, I'm success. I don't flex, I'm success. Effortless, see I got it. I don't flex, I'm success. I don't flex, I'm success. I don't flex, I'm success. Effortless, see I. I'ma kick, 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 I'ma be the best that you never had. Rumba pa pa, rumba pa pa, see I got it. Rumba pa pa, rumba pa pa, no you want it. I don't flex, I'm success. Effortless, I'm like a rumba pa pa, rumba pa pa, see I got it. Rumba pa pa, rumba pa pa, see I got it. Rumba pa pa, rumba pa pa, no you want it. I don't flex, I'm success. Effortless, I'm like a rumba pa pa, rumba pa.
What up, y'all? Okay, man, I'm excited. Live events. You know what my dream is? I gotta tell you, my biggest dream is to somehow merge everything we've put into Pendants into Pensari Basketball, and Pensari Basketball into Pendants, and then maybe one day we'll be like this super hip film festival that basketball players actually want to attend. That would be my dream come true. Honestly, imagine Scottie Barnes walking down the red carpet of the Pendants Film Festival in 3 years. We're gonna make it happen. He has a standing invite if he ever watches this. Free passes for Scottie Barnes. Scottie Barnes watches movies free at Pendants. All right, so let's get into this Becky Hammon thing. First, a little bit of an intro as we wait for this chat to populate. I've read a lot of positive press about the Becky Hammon situation, right? And, you know, some of it came from Doug Smith, which I was very surprised by, because I got to tell you, my history on this is pretty clear. I've been anti Doug Smith, everything he says. It's like, exactly, you want to know what I think, go read what he thinks. I think the opposite, almost always. So I'm genuinely surprised when I agree with the guy, and it never happens, and it just finally happened. He wrote this piece about, why the Raptors should hire Becky Hammon. And, in it, he used a lot of the same talking points that a lot of people use to support the decision, which is, she had some history with Pop. She worked under Popovich. Pau Gasol wrote a Players Tribune article supporting her hiring, and Some people say, well, DeMar DeRozan vouches for her, Manu Ginobili vouches for her, Tony Parker vouches for her. You see the problem? Do 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 you see the issue? Now, man, one of our frequent commenters here has decided to brand everything that I have to say about Becky Hammon as woke culture. Man, if you know me in real life, you know that I'm not someone who subscribes to woke culture, but I am someone who subscribes to pragmatism. And I don't see people's gender, skin color, height, weight. I try to see past those things because they're not necessarily relevant in most issues. But I can't be blind to them because they do inform the issues. Do you know what I mean? So if a woman has coached in the NBA the way that she has, you better believe she's put up with a lot of heckling, a lot of people telling her that she can't do this and can't do that. And you better believe that her pathway to becoming a head coach will be the hardest pathway of probably any person to become a head coach since possibly the first person who became the first black head coach. The problem with always using the vouching words of men to support why she's a good coach is it ignores the issue. It ignores the fact that she is a good coach and that you shouldn't need a man to tell you that. You shouldn't need Pau Gasol's glowing review of her. You shouldn't need DeMar DeRozan saying that she needs a chance. Because do you see what it is, right? It's kind of like, it's a little bit like saying this black person is good because this white person said so. It's stupid. You should be able to just listen to her and verify for yourself, right? You see what I mean? Now, I try to make sure that I don't have blind spots and biases. And when I identify biases and blind spots, regardless of whether it's how someone speaks, the accent, I mean, we all have biases. We all have biases. We ran I took a social course in U of T, and we ran a test where the identical resume was presented with two different names. One was a very anglicized name, and one was a very difficult to pronounce Sri Lankan name. Yo, I tell you, the responses to those two, and this is before, we were as inclusive as we are as a society, was staggering. Staggering. Same resume, same references, same experience, same everything. But one person's name was very hard to pronounce. Do we have a bias? Is it perhaps hate? No, it doesn't have to be hate. It's just discomfort. It's fear. Maybe I don't want to talk to somebody on the phone and mispronounce their name on the first interview, so maybe I'm going to avoid calling them and I'm just going to keep calling Mike Smith over and over. New is uncomfortable. Every time you try to do something new, it's uncomfortable. When you rebel, it's uncomfortable because you don't have an entire field work of examples of when it worked out for other people. So being the first black pitcher is going to be uncomfortable and you're going to put up with a lot of shit. But you blaze a trail for other people to come after you. Being the first female head coach in the NBA is going to be very uncomfortable for Becky Hammon. But if there's anybody who's got the tough skin and the thick skin to do it, it's someone like her. I was not very impressed with Nick Nurse this year. His entire vibe felt very beta. I'm just being real. It just felt very passive, very whiny, very annoying. He's very annoying. You can't hold your stars accountable, right? You have your NN hat. I don't know why that always bothered me, but it always did. And then you have this entire controversy where unprompted, you offer this entire soliloquy about your future as your team is preparing for the play-in, where you're supposed to be like your entire franchise has leveraged everything to get you a center that you so desperately clearly wanted so that they can make a run. And then you say, 10 years is a long time, let me reflect, blah, blah, blah. And you present this entire distraction. And then When questioned about it, you gaslight the interviewer, the reporter who's asking you, and please understand this is the first, last, and perhaps only time that I'm going to side with the reporter on this issue. But you gaslight the reporter and say that you were just responding to a incessant series of questions that you've been asked about your future when you were never asked about your future. It just happened to be an article that was written. You offered it unprompted and you handled it the worst possible way. So instead of telling you what Pau Gasol and DeMar DeRozan and I think about Becky Hammon, why don't we just listen to Becky Hammon, deal with a situation that Nick Nurse often found himself in this year, and I just want you to stop looking at her like a woman or a first female head coach or an ex-NBA player. Just listen to her as a person and try to tell me if this is the type of person that you would want to play under. Now, this is how Becky Hammon responded to her team not doing what they said they were going to do, which is play hard. Okay, just listen to it.
Anything specific talked about at halftime that you think kind of lit a fire under them?
Oh, I was lit. I was lit. Because everything we had talked about, we didn't do any of it. And true to form, they just step up and do it then. I'm like I said, I don't even yell in my real life. But when you feel so strongly about how you have to play a certain way, and I feel very strongly offensively and defensively about how we have to play. When you go out there and you don't execute it, it's frustrating. But at the end of the day, they know it. They're smart. They get it. But they had beat us in every hustle category. And that can't happen. You can't lose a championship or a game or a quarter on hustle. That can never be the case.
Is you referenced twice, they didn't do what we discussed before the game, and you had to get lit with them in the locker room. What were the things you discussed coming into the game?
Points in the paint, rebounding, hustle points, transition points, second chance points. You can go down the list. We didn't do any of them until the second half.
Were you outside yourself? Were you more lit than usual in this halftime?
Yes.
Okay, now the second one.
Do you feel it? Do you feel the winner? Do you feel the passion? Because I can tell you right now, players are smart. They sniff this shit out real quick. Now, just a little compare and contrast. Here's Nicky Nurse responding to whether he feels like his comments that I alluded to earlier backfired. Notice how these two people respond to a question.
That happened last year. I think it happens a lot, right? I think, from my standpoint, I think, well, let's deal with the assistants first of all, that you can get them up here to talk if you want them to talk about their own, but that's happened almost every year, right? For 10 years that some assistants getting named for a job. So I think, again, that's part of the territory. And as from my standpoint, like the speculation of whether I was going to be back or not that started, I have no idea where that comes from, right? Or what I was supposed to do about that, right? And what I thought was I needed to try to get the team or any of the players or anybody focused back on the job at hand, right? And try to not have to answer that question every game. Started coming one after another, and I was trying to put it to bed, and so we could focus on the season. Again, it's part of it, right? I mean, I think it's part of it.
You want to count how many times this dude lied in this? Because it's like, I think I'm up to seven lies. And you know what the problem is? Everybody knows. Everybody knows you're talking about something that's been publicly discussed. So tell me how many times this guy came out in front of the media and talked about something that was a blatant lie because it was covering his own behind. Oh, we talked about this, we did that, we didn't do any of that shit. And you're a player listening to this. You're a player like Gary Trent Jr., and you're hearing your name in the media, and you're hearing yourself blasted, and you're like, well, how come he didn't talk to me? Wouldn't that be the manly thing to do, is to have a front to front with me, talking about why this guy's not playing, and you haven't even told that player why he's not playing? How is that integrity? Can you tell me that?
There's lots of teams that go through that, and you got to handle it the way you best see fit, and that's what I tried to do.
Do you think that backfired?
No.
Because, I mean, you kind of opened the door to all the questions.
I did, or you guys did?
Look at this. Straight
Yeah.
bitch move. You did. Own up to it.
I'm just wondering, like, do you regret that?
Not at all. I mean, I think the door got opened weeks before, right?
Because anyone, like, I don't think anyone here asked you specifically about your future. And
Well, was it being reported or not being reported? My future.
there was one story, as far as I know. And, you know, I don't know if that subject had ever been raised prior to that. And I take that instance of Billy. I think it was a pretty general question. Like, I know the person who asked it, I asked them about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think the way you answered it was, I don't know if confusing is the right word, but it kind of allowed some interpretations in terms of, you know, being here for a long time, and a lot to reflect about your relationship with the front office, like, you know, it would have.
Well, my stance on my relationship with the front office is what I just said earlier. Like, Masai really wants to win. I really want to win. We're driving to try to figure out how to get back to a championship level, right? I think, again, our communication is open and honest with each other. I think that's all that I can say there. Like, I, again, don't have a whole lot of uncomfortable days working here with him, right? Even though when, you know, we all want better results. He wants them, I want them, especially from this season.
All right. And now the controversy. The controversial. I kind of wish she didn't say boys. I'm going to be honest. I wish she didn't say boys. I love it with you 100%. I wish she didn't say boys. But to anyone saying that there's a racial connotation to the word boys, chill. It's not meant that way. You know it's not meant that way. Her team is black. I mean, come on, man. All right. And honestly, like, you see her interaction with all sorts of people. You see her interaction with black players. You see her interaction with, you know, players in San Antonio. She's never had favorites. She's never been like, oh, I'm just gonna be with what you can tell. I feel like if you see a racist, you know a racist. This had nothing to do with that.
How do you manage that with your players, keeping them coming into this camp motivated, looking forward to this season, and kind of tuning out anything that they cannot control?
Yeah, I already made a comment on Toronto, and I just said I'm not commenting on Toronto because this is all about the Aces, and I won't take one moment away from these women to talk about them boys.
All right. Now, let's be real. She will take the Toronto job in all likelihood. 99.9%, I'm pretty certain about it. It's been a lifelong dream of hers. Well, not a lifelong dream, but she's at least been dreaming about it for 8 years. She's interviewed for the Milwaukee, I believe, the open general manager position at one point. She's interviewed for the Milwaukee head coaching job, which went to Coach Budenholzer. So I think it's important to realize at this point that this is without the word boys. I wish she hadn't used the word boys because it sort of demeans, you know, the second thing. She could have, I don't think she meant to say it that way. I'm pretty sure she just, my boys, do you know what I mean? Like, those are my boys, those are my guys, whatever. And I think she wanted to elevate her team. And look, the chances of her getting the Toronto job, I'm going to be real with you, probably less than 10%. The chances of her holding on to that Aces job for the rest of her life, 100%. Right? They need her real bad. She just won a championship with them. She's probably going to repeat. Their team is amazing. Asia and Kelsey, two of the best players in the WNBA. You know, she's got everything. She's the best coach in the WNBA, in my opinion. So, yeah, most likely. But appreciate, for instance, right, someone not making it about themselves in that moment. Straight up, right? Because this to me requires commitment to the people who are with you. Now imagine what her team is going through, right? Now give it the 10% chance. The 10% chance that she gets this Toronto job, right? She's one of 8, 9, possibly 10 candidates they're going to look at. They just interviewed Jordi Fernandez on Friday. He's a super strong candidate. I'm starting to see him getting pushed around NBA circles as one of the top assistants. So the reality of the situation is she's got a locker room full of women who are, quite frankly, champions. This is the best team. They're the best team. I think you need to take a moment to realize just how important that is. I mean, they're the best team in their sport, right? They're not facing the Lakers. They're not facing the Grizzlies. Those are champions. You have to consider them as champions, just like the Golden State Warriors last year, or just like the Raptors 3 years ago. That's a championship team. She's got a championship team. She's not leaving bums. She's leaving some of the best players. And she's not going to do that. She's not going to throw her team under the bus and be like, "Oh yeah, I would be really excited to take the Toronto job." Well, how the fuck is your team? How the fuck is your team supposed to feel? Like, you burn a bridge. What'd you expect her to say, right? I wish Nick Nurse had said what she said. I'm not going to take a second away from the Toronto Raptors to discuss the Houston Rockets. I am committed to this team. What did he say? He said, I dug up the quote. It's really hard to find the clip, but you can find it on Twitter of his initial comments. And he said, "We need playoff experience." Yo, you lost before you even got there. We need to get playoff experience. If that's the vibe he was carrying in the locker room, no wonder your team missed 18 free throws and folded. They had no belief. No belief. Yeah, I agree, Eric, for sure. Like, she just misspoke. Like, it's just like she's sassy. Like, she's got attitude. She's got crazy attitude. But you got to understand, like, for any woman, in my opinion, to do this, like to get into the NBA level, you gotta like instantly get people's respect. And I think that this is the type of attitude that men can respect. I really do believe that. Because if you're a secure man, you're not looking for, someone to come in and be intimidated by you. You need, because I mean, look, man, coaching is hard. Coaching in the NBA is hard. There are so many so many men who are first-time coaches. Look at Ettore Messina. Look at David Blatt. Look at these people, right? These are legends in Europe, but they don't have NBA experience, enough experience, pedigree, and they get bullied by NBA players because of their accent, because, oh, well, what you know, whatever, right? You don't know anything about the NBA. Nick Nurse, he got overridden several times as a rookie head coach. Why? Because he didn't have head coaching experience. Man, unless you're Rick Carlisle, George Karl, Stan Van Gundy, Jeff Van Gundy, unless you're like Steve Kerr, unless you're one of these people, it's hard, man. Look at what Kyrie Irving said about Steve Nash. He said, "Oh, we don't really, it's not like we really don't even have a coach. We're all kind of the coach in that way." Such is the life of being a first-time coach in the NBA. You have to fight for your food, man. And so at the end of the day, if I'm a Raptors player and I'm looking at this potential coach and she just threw her team under the bus, well, how long until she does that to me? You got to understand that. That's a really human component of this. So my genuine feeling about this is that you need to approach this with an open mind and you need to listen to her. I don't need you. I would prefer you not clip, "Oh, Pau Gasol said this, DeMar DeRozan said this." Yes, they are all very, very glowing endorsements. They are not, "Oh, she would be all right." No, they are, "She would be great. She's a great coach. She's one of the best coaches. She's amazing. She deserves this." It's not, and that's a very diverse range of, people that she's gotten those recommendations from Popovich to Marc Gasol, to Pau Gasol, to DeMar DeRozan, to Jakob Poeltl. It is a very diverse range of, group of people coming from all different walks of life and all different styles of basketball, suggesting that this is a person. But instead of using those references, use your own eyes, use your own ears, hear what she has to say. So that's my Becky Hammon bit of this. Now, Scottie Barnes. So, yesterday, 1 a.m., I turn on Instagram and Scottie Barnes has a story. And this is just
Between starts.
this dude.
Here's another new athlete embracing the city of Toronto and the country, in fact. Scottie Barnes, the first-round pick of the Toronto Raptors, throws out the first pitch. It's the Twins.
So that was from last year. And I got to tell you, this guy has taken a very unique approach to embracing Toronto. And it's really funny. He walks around the city, and it's a really weird sight when you see him because he's got these arms down to his knees and he clearly sticks out everywhere he goes. And he'll dap up fans and he'll give you like a high five, give you a hug. You know, if you're a restaurant staff, he'll give you a hug. So he's all over the place there. He's riding around on his scooter, going to Shoppers Drug Mart. Look over, see like basically a 7-footer on a scooter. You're like, are you a basketball? Oh my God, it's Scottie Barnes. Throwing out pitches for the Blue Jays. Going to Leaf games with Larry Tannenbaum in Florida on the road, saying "Go Leafs, go!" Yo, I'm in Toronto. I don't say "Go Leafs, go." I don't like hockey, but I gotta appreciate what this guy's doing. So at 1 a.m. last night, he has this random thing on Instagram, which is "Go Leafs, go." I think they won or something. I don't follow the Leafs, but it's interesting. Shout outs to Scarborough, Brampton Mans are waste youths. Doing the Toronto lingo thing with Delano Banton. Returning a $400 shirt because it's too expensive after he already wore it once. Yo, this is a little bit like that Twitter thing that DeMar did about I got us after the Chris Bosh trade. I am Toronto. Y'all remember that? I gotta appreciate him. You gotta appreciate a guy who has the sensibility to do this. Do I need to remind you that the first order of business after he became a Toronto draft pick was to pen a Players Tribune article? If you haven't read it, or if you didn't care to read it then, go read it now. He tells you everything he wanted to do. And in it, he said, Toronto, we are going to do something special. This is a city that is really, really starving for a winner. More importantly, they're starving for a winner who gets us. I say us as an outsider. I'm not from here. I wasn't born here. I didn't grow up here. But I feel like I'm from here now. I've spent more of my life here than I have anywhere else. And so there's a part of me that feels like I'm kind of sick of people talking about this place the way that Terrence Ross talked about Toronto, or people just bringing up the weather and this and that. Every person, you know, here's the thing. Players always say the right things, right? They say the right things to the media. They say, oh, Toronto's a beautiful city. It's like a mini New York. It's not, but whatever. But how many of them really genuinely embrace the city? Like really take the time to get to know it. Really take the time to like plant some roots here. You know what I mean? That Google Pixel ad, this is my home. Yo, like, he didn't have to do that. He really didn't. Culture is such an important thing, and when your best player, you know, has his eye out the door, it sets a tone for everyone who comes into the organization that this is not a place to be. When your best player wants to be here, loves the city, is willing to take rookies on little tours of hotspots around the city, glowingly talks about the city even when he's not being asked by Canadian reporters, but rather when he's being asked by reporters from Florida. When your best player, and I'm not saying Scottie's our best player, I just want to say that out loud, just so no one accuses me of that. I just want to say that when your best player takes that approach, it changes the vibe of every person who comes into that situation. Pride is important. It's very important. It's one of the most underrated things about sports is pride. Vince took some pride in being here. You know, he tried to recruit top-end free agents to come here. They didn't want to come here back then because MLSE was a joke. This franchise was a joke. They didn't know how to do things. But now, I hypothesized very loudly when Kawhi left, when is someone going to get it? When is someone going to take the opportunity that is here in this country and really run with it? When is someone going to see that this is a way better situation than Phoenix, Atlanta, Charlotte, San Antonio, Houston, whatever? When is someone going to see the untapped potential of this market the way that Masai Ujiri, Tim Lewicki, and a lot of other people have seen it? You have to see past the obvious. You have to see 38 to 40 million people in a country. You have to see it. You have to see the growth of this game in this country. You have to see the expansion internationally. You have to understand the international sentiment, which means countries other than the United States, and their feelings towards the United States historically. You have to understand that if you want to launch yourself into being a billion-dollar athlete, what do I talk about when I say billion-dollar athlete? Michael Jordan, Steph Curry, LeBron James. You want to become that level of athlete? Probably not going to do it in Atlanta, right? You can do it in LA. You can do it in New York. And in a very less obvious way, you can do it in Toronto. I promise you. You can. Take it from me. I'm a finance guy. I know this. You can be so big here, but you have to understand your market. Every market is different. New York is different. Why do you think this Knicks team is so beloved in New York? They play New York basketball. That's what it is, right? Why do you think Jeff Van Gundy, Pat Riley, why do you think these people were so beloved in New York? Why do you think Jeremy Lin was so beloved in New York? Why do you think Andrea Bargnani was so hated in New York? Because every city has its culture. Kobe belonged in LA. He just fit. He was Tinseltown. That's who he is. Scottie gets it. I don't know if he gets it in a calculated way, but I've never spoken to anyone who's even remotely connected to him and gotten the sense that he was even 1% less than anything but thrilled to be here. Never got the sense. Always trying to, find new restaurants, always trying to find new spots, new sponsorships, support the skill trade, support this, walking around the city scooter, shouting out the Leafs, shouting out the Blue Jays, following the Leafs, following the Blue Jays. These are small, underrated things that some people just don't get. They don't get it. They don't get what this city needs, and they don't get what this city needs from them. But if you are going to be a superstar, you have to be integrated. You have to be integrated into your new environment. You have to understand your environment. I got to tell you, there is a very important thing when it comes to culture building. And it starts with the tone and the leadership that you're setting at the grassroots level. When I say that the vibe is wrong with a Chris Bosh when he has his eye one foot out the door, I tell you, people privately who have this belief, everyone in their family knows they're not staying around. That the first chance they get to leave, that they wouldn't mind leaving. They kind of hate the cold. They get the vibe because that's the talking point, right? That's the talking points. And everybody knows. Everyone in their life knows. Their teammates know. It's a vibe. You have these conversations with your teammates. Yo, you sticking around? You sticking around Toronto? You coming back to Toronto in the summer? What did Scottie do last year? Brought all his friends to Montreal. Y'all remember that? It was an amazing trip. Amazing trip. And everyone had a blast. It was great. He introduced 7 or 8 Americans. All of his friends. I think one of them was Canadian. I can't remember who was there, who was not. But he brought them to Montreal, and he's just partying it up, and he's sharing everything, and it's like tagging Montreal, and it's just like, do you know what I mean? It's Canada-wide. He understands it. Someone gave him the vision. Maybe Masai. Maybe Masai sold him on the vision. But there is some serious potential for a really great player. This city will not support a bum. We're past that. We're past supporting fraud superstars, right? I think we're past it. This city will not embrace somebody who doesn't work hard. I know that. This is a hockey town. This city will not embrace someone who's soft. Again, blue collar. It's like the Detroit Pistons, right? Yeah, ever wonder why the two most successful, most beloved iterations of the Detroit Pistons were an embodiment of Detroit? The superstar in Toronto that will be beloved will have a lot of the same qualities that a Kyle Lowry had. Kyle Lowry often calls this his second home. He embraced the city. Was it real? Was it not? Don't care. I'm just saying. For the average person is not digging into what's real and what's not. It's Scottie, it is real though. It is real. And I think that it's a really unique approach. Now, finally, there was a bit of a controversy or a bit of a kerfuffle. Let's call it a kerfuffle with Giannis Antetokounmpo after the game where his team lost to the Miami Heat. He talked about a lot of things. He talked about the adjustments that his team didn't make. He talked about having respect for his coach and not wanting to go above his coach, but yes, he wishes he had guarded Jimmy Butler more. He says, I told Drew, this is a direct quote, I told Drew, sometimes he gets tired. I'd be happy to guard him, but I can't go above my coach. And it got me thinking. It got me thinking a lot. Do you know that Kawhi Leonard, do y'all remember this? Game 2. Milwaukee, Toronto, 2019 playoffs. Going to the locker room, Nick Nurse has some bright ideas about adjustments. Some new scheme that he's going to try to run to slow down Giannis Antetokounmpo. And what did Kawhi Leonard say? Towel on his head, clear out his ears. He said, yeah, the adjustment is I'm going to guard Giannis. And he walked out. It's one of the most endearing Kawhi Leonard stories. Perhaps some good press for Kawhi Leonard, given everything that's happened in his life, unfortunately, over the last week and a half with his sister and with the injury and everything going on in Clipperland and all the shit that's coming out. But, worth noting, winners rebel. Losers conform. In my clearest estimation, this is the biggest difference between people who win in life and people who lose. Giannis knew what was the right thing to do. And whether it was the right thing or wrong thing to do, eventually, it doesn't really matter. Because he waited for his coach to make the adjustment, and the adjustment never happened. And now he gets to hold a loss and spend an entire summer wondering, regardless of what he says, about whether or not his coach made the right decision. Look at one of the greatest predictors of success at an early age is mistakes. How willing are you to make a mistake? Most people are petrified of making mistakes. Do you know this? I once spoke to a scout who said that the clearest sign that a player was going to be really great was the types of turnovers they got. Not that they didn't get turnovers. The types of turnovers they were getting at the youth level. The willingness to color outside the lines. The willingness to do these small things is what creates greatness in a human being. The willingness to break rules, believe it or not, can be one of the greatest predictors of success. Do you know that the people who break rules at the most extreme end of society, which is, I'm talking like fraudsters, embezzlers, criminals, murderers, etc., on one side, Okay? Those people have more in common, in my opinion, with CEOs, star athletes, best-selling authors, the greatest filmmakers, the greatest speakers, all those people. They are both on the opposite ends, but they are both very similar in that they are outliers. Outliers. Greatness, whether you succeed at the worst thing or the best thing, requires some level of deviance from the norm. Thinking outside the box, as P just said, the willingness to threaten the status quo. Jimmy Butler has that. He has that. He's willing to be called out as the bad guy. He's willing to be called out unprofessional. He's so straight up in some of his interviews, it's almost comical. Just calling out his coach, calling out whoever. Yo, if you can keep that under check and keep it from being toxic, it's actually a very good predictor for success. A very good predictor for success. I think that Giannis Antetokounmpo could learn a few things from Kawhi Leonard. Because you should be the author of your own season. In this very specific case, I think that it is important to stand up for what you believe was the right thing to do. And this is why when I look at something like Scottie standing up to Thaddeus Young, Scottie standing up to Fred VanVleet, Scottie even asserting to Masai Ujiri that he didn't want to go to the finals because he had this thing that he wanted to do instead. I think these are important things because they show a person who is willing to think outside the box. They show a person who is willing to voice their opinion. And that's what all greats do. Michael Jordan punched teammates. He got called a bad teammate for it. He got called ruthless. But it was outside the norm. There's nothing normal about it. Greatness requires deviance from the norm. If you want to be the herd, you will be. If you want to think like the herd, you want to act like the herd, you will be the herd. In order to be anything more than an average person, you have to do something exceptional, which means you have to think exceptional. An exception is always an outlier. Exception is a mindset. Winning is a mindset. To tie this all together, fear, I believe, stops most people from doing what is required and what is necessary to achieve what they want. You might think your issue is procrastination in life. You might think your issue is addiction. I assure you, in almost every single case in your life, fear is actually the problem. You might think Pascal Siakam doesn't have the clutch gene. It comes down to fear. It always comes down to fear, man. Openness to experience is one of the most psychologically relevant predictors of success in the world. These are small things, very small things that you pick up on as you do like tons and tons of research on abnormal psychology. I tell you, there was a story around the pandemic that came out. After the pandemic, when the Raptors came back to Tampa, Pascal Siakam rode a streetcar for the first time. And this is a very big deal for him. He said that he had never done it, got on one stop, and then he got right off, and he was just happy that he kind of got over this fear of being on the streetcar. That's fear. Now, I'm not judging people for their fears. We all have different fears. Some people are afraid of this, afraid of that. But as someone who used to be afraid of a lot of things when I was younger, and how much that created anxiety and this sort of crippling, frozenness in me, I got to tell you, there's really only one response that's accurate and healthy towards fear. Overcome it. You cannot live with fear. Cannot live with fear. And fear is what will cripple you from winning. Because in every single situation in which a team goes through 16 games to win an NBA championship, at some point or another, you will encounter a situation that is terrifying. You will encounter a bad press quote. You will encounter a scandal. You will encounter, a tough question. You will encounter a player going off on your head and you can't do anything about it. You will encounter a tough shot that you have to make with no time on the clock. And in that moment, if your brain does not deal well with the emotion of fear, if you have not learned to quell that demon, you will fail. Michael Jordan's fucking fearless. That's why he wins. He's fearless. Does that mean he makes every single shot in the clutch? Hell no. Nobody does that. That's just physically impossible. But look at his clutch percentages. Look at Kawhi's clutch percentages. Does Kawhi Leonard strike you as someone who's afraid? There is a direct link between how you deal with fear and how you deal with fearful situations. I don't know if that's freaking the most obvious thing I've ever said in my life, but it's true. And new, for some people, is fearful. Different is fearful. And so being in a new country, new environment, new people, new coach, new friends, new whatever, you have an option every single time you encounter a situation that is new, which is either to be afraid of it or to embrace it. I feel over, 2 years of watching Scottie's career unfold in Toronto over and over again, he has taken every new thing with a hint of optimism and excitement and possibility of what is possible. Does not, imagine a guy who grew up in Florida. Imagine how old Scottie was. He was 11 years old when LeBron James came to Miami. Sorry, he was 9 years old. You don't think he knew a lot about LeBron James? He was a big, gifted playmaker. You don't think he heard a million times, yo, you're going to be like LeBron. Yo, bro, I had a 6'2" teammate who passed the ball a little bit well when I was younger, and I told him he was going to be like LeBron. So I'm pretty sure a 6'5" grade 8 guy got the LeBron stuff a lot. He's probably heard about LeBron his whole life. He's watched LeBron. LeBron was literally winning championships in his state when he was a kid. You would imagine, given that he grew up a Magic Johnson fan, watched Magic Johnson highlights growing up, dad took him, to a Heat game, Kobe fan, compared to LeBron a lot when he was younger. You would imagine that all of those situations bubbling up. Family has roots in LA. Family has roots in Miami. This is like, he's supposed to be a fucking LeBron fanboy. You would imagine that when the media asks him, oh, so did you look up to LeBron when you were growing up? That he would be like, yeah, LeBron's great. What did he say? Actually, I was more of a Kobe fan. That took guts. You would imagine that going up against that same player that you've been compared to your whole fucking life, that you probably grew up, idolized, probably took a lot from his game, probably admired the fuck out of his game. He's one of the top 2 players of all time. He's the leading scorer of all time. You would imagine that going up against that guy in a building that you once dreamt of, looking at all those fucking banners, that you would choke in that moment. Your nerves would get the best of you. But what did he do? Google his box score first time against LeBron. Dude put up, I think, 27 points per game against LeBron head-to-head that season. Learn from it. I promise you, it's something amazing, man. My life changed the second I started looking at fearful situations. I still have more anxiety than I would like, but my life changed completely when I start looking at situations with a sense of what could go right as opposed to what can go wrong. Think of it from the sense of possibility. The possibility that something can go wrong is always there. But when you approach it with the sense of, I hope it doesn't go wrong, it tends to go wrong. I think most players, a story that comes to mind is Vince Carter against Michael Jordan. Again, a player who was compared to Michael Jordan. Do you remember that game? Vince Carter goes off for 23 points in the first half, I believe. He had 23 points in the first half. Jordan struggling. I believe the story was that at halftime, he goes up to Michael Jordan and he asks him something along the lines of, like, for his number. He didn't have his number or something. He asked for his number. And Jordan was like, and that's when I knew I had him. Jordan went off in the second half. I don't remember if Vince scored a point. These types of things are very clear indicators of, don't quote me on that. I think he might have scored a little bit, but like it was a clear shift. He did not put up anything close to his first half performance in the second half. And that was when Jordan came back with the Wizards. I think it takes one to know one is a little bit of an overused statement, but I think it shows up here. When I listen to Becky Hammon, I hear all the same stuff that I really like in Scottie Barnes. An outspoken, optimistic, confident, but real confidence, not that fake bravado bullshit confidence like, I'm a top 50 player and I don't need to listen to NBA fans. That shit. Real confidence. And that shit carries, and it leads to winning. Because the truth is, when you, as a coach, are down 3-2 in a do or die series, that's fear. And you cannot let fear override critical judgment. You cannot. And when you as a player are in that situation, all the things that could go wrong start spiraling through your head. You have to be able to come past it. And if you have not dealt with fear, you cannot find success in the NBA, in my opinion. Like real success, like top 10 player all time type success. You take a look at all the greatest players who ever played this game and tell me which of them are not psychologically fucking bulletproof. Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan. Like it goes on and on and on. There are no fragile people who are succeeding in the NBA. It is the toughest league in the league. It's the toughest league in the world, in my opinion. One of the toughest leagues in the world. And for basketball, it's definitely the toughest league in the world. Very difficult, if not impossible, to succeed if you are constantly tripping up over your own anxieties and your own fears. Anxious players do not do well in tough situations. Someone saying Becky over Jama? No. I'm cool with either or. I'm fine with either or. Look, here's like my final take on this. I'm not presenting Becky Hammon as the best. She's better than Jama. She's better than this person. I don't know that. I can definitely tell you, though, the arguments that I've seen against her are stupid as fuck. Someone said the other day that we don't need someone unproven. We need someone with experience like Jama. She has more experience than Jama. As an assistant coach, she has better experience than Jama. You cannot tell me that coaching under Dwayne Casey is the same thing or should be equivalent years as coaching under Greg Popovich. Okay? You can't do that. You cannot tell me that coaching the Las Vegas Aces to a championship is any more relevant or less. You cannot tell me it's less relevant than coaching the 905. Come on, let's not be stupid and disrespectful here, right? So she has the experience. She has the tenure. She has the recommendations. She has the pedigree. She has the personality. She has everything. So you want to split hairs between her, Jordi Fernandez, Jama Mala. I learned how to say his name 3 days ago, and now I've forgotten it. It's Mashalela, I believe. There's like a S somewhere in there. So I think at the end of the day, this always is going to come down not to experience, but it's going to come down, in my opinion, to fit. What do you need? All coaches are not built for the same situations. Dwayne Casey is not built for the same situation as Nick Nurse. Nick Nurse is not built for the same situations as Greg Popovich. Every coach is different. I need a coach who can develop, motivate, inspire, change culture. That's what I need. I need a coach who understands X's and O's, who can command the respect of her or his players. She hits every box. You know what? So does Jordi Fernandez. Jordi Fernandez just interviewed with the Raptors on Friday. I'd be very curious to see look, this is an awkward time. A lot of your candidates, a lot of your lead candidates are busy. The Las Vegas Aces are starting their season right now. Right? The WNBA season just kicking off. And Jordi Fernandez is heading up for Game 7, right? Against the Sacramento Kings today. Wow, that game is very soon. So there's a lot. There's a lot on the table right now for these two coaches. And so, you almost wonder, like, where are their minds at? What will their exit be, right? It's not like Jama can just start right away. I mean, he's not going to leave his team in the lurch, would he? Like, that would be very difficult. So if Sacramento continues on, he is their associate coach. He's not their assistant coach. He is their associate coach. He is Mike Brown's right-hand man. You cannot extract him from that situation. So if Sacramento's season continues past this series, like, I don't think you have him. That's going to be difficult. So I looked into the Stackhouse stuff. I got to be honest. I'm still not a buyer into Stackhouse, but I get it. Like, I've heard stories of him, like, being the genuine most toughest guy ever in his locker room, and I get it. Like, I understand that everyone's kind of got this preoccupation with gotta hold Fred accountable, gotta hold Pascal accountable. And so, naturally you're going to go with the biggest, toughest, angriest, most proven, most all-star berths. You're going to look at the guy. You're going to look at Jerry Stackhouse. Obviously and I'm asking you to think outside the box for a second. Because yes, when you stack up, no pun intended, Jerry Stackhouse, 6'6", ex-NBA all-star, tough guy, resident, one of the baddest motherfuckers in the NBA history. You don't mess with him. He's genuinely, like, he will knock your fucking teeth out. You stack that guy up against, 5'6" Becky Hammon, Mr. Nice Guy Jama, and, never played in the NBA, barely has any roots in the NBA, Jordi Fernandez. I understand why your head is going right to Jerry Stackhouse, because he can hold these guys accountable. Maybe think of it from the other side. Don't make the same mistake that Masai Ujiri made. Let me put it that way. Masai Ujiri said that Jakob Poeltl solves our selfishness problems. No, he doesn't. Because those selfishness problems shouldn't exist. I think Masai Ujiri finally gets that there is no solving the problem without understanding the problem. I got to tell you something that I learned from Becky Hammon, listening to her a lot over the last few days, and it's something that's okay. We have 3 minutes left before the hour. I wanted to keep this to an hour, so let me just end this off. My girlfriend and I have had a ton of issues communicating over the last 3 years. We've been together for about 3 years and a few months. I'm thinking about starting a family. And oftentimes I want to lead her in a good direction. Like, I want to lead her into, understanding her finances better, or understanding her success better. Or, I think 2.5 years ago, we started talking about eating better, working out, doing all this stuff, right? I tend to take more of a leadership role in my relationships and in my life in general. I have been called, like, dating a stairmaster sometimes. Like, I'm very intense sometimes, so I need to chill too. And too often, one of the things that Becky Hammon said was that in order to hold people accountable, you need to have benchmarks. And I've understood this implicitly. So you create a benchmark with a person, right? So you say, like, okay, so say if you're in the NBA, you're a coach, you say, okay, well, you're going to be the best rebounder every time you put you on the court. Whether I put you on the court for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, you're going to be a better rebounder than your cross match. Whoever you're matched up against, I want you to out rebound that person. Do you agree to that? Yes, you do. Okay. Now, every time you don't do it, I get to tell you didn't fucking do it. And every time you do it, I give you a pat on the ass and say you did a great job. That's accountability, right? That's also a great way to motivate people. The problem is, and something that I really learned from Becky Hammon listening to her, was this process of holding people accountable works 1,000 times better if you actually take the time to work with them to understand where they are, number one. And number two, you include them in the process of negotiation in terms of what they are being held accountable for. So the first question to ask Precious Achua is not, do you agree to my stringent role that I have defined for you? But rather the question is, what do you see your role as? How do you feel like you've grown over the last few years as a player? I need to understand you before I can lead you. And quite frankly, that was the thing with my girlfriend that I just wasn't understanding, which is that I need to understand why she has an aversion to saving money the way I wish she would save some money, or maybe learning a little bit more about, like, what her version was to cutting out sugar from her life, 2.5 years ago. Like, because you present this sort of scary proposition to someone, like, hey, we got to save like $20,000 this year because we're starting a family and want to buy a house and whatever. And you don't even listen to what their value system is, what their fears are, what their, and so that was sort of the takeaway from Becky, which is the first step to holding people accountable is actually not even a step to holding people accountable. It's actually understanding the people that you're trying to hold accountable, because people learn differently. You don't know, right? The Ringer has an entire podcast called The Redraftables. And one of the common things that Bill Simmons says is, if you played out this guy's career 10 times, this is the worst possible version of that career. So he thinks about guys like Michael Redd, Kenyon Martin in the 2000 draft, Yao Ming, Jay Williams, et cetera, et cetera. And you have to realize that there is some sort of system in place where guys can either rise or fall based on the people in the locker room, their teammates, the opportunity, the role, how well they're motivated, how well they're understood. I remember watching rookie J.R. Smith kind of, falling apart in New Orleans. And I just remember seeing like how his veterans kind of kept him motivated and on track. And so, we got this very long career for JR. He's like, he leads his entire draft class in 3-pointers made. So I just thought that it was hilarious that, that whole thing couldn't have happened. He came out of high school. He could have easily fizzled out of the league in a year. And we're talking J.R. Smith completely different. Instead of clowning him for, that big mistake in the finals that he had, we're clowning him for, oh, there's a high school player who didn't stay in the league. So I don't know. What do you think of Darvin Ham? He's a good tough guy coach. I like him. I don't like him that much as a coach. I had my reservations about him. Because I guess like he's a player's coach, and I have a bit of I don't know. I got a feeling from Doc Rivers that I'm not the hugest fan of player coaches, but he's done a great job. I was not happy with their Rui Hachimura trade. I hated watching that guy I liked him early. I liked him in college, but I hated watching him for most of his time in Washington. And then he goes to the Los Angeles Lakers, and I'm like, whew, this guy's different. He's great. Like, he's really good. And I did not see that coming at all, man. So, I mean, look, again, sometimes you just need a shift in scenery. You don't know. Like, here's something. You don't know if we send Delano Banton to the Lakers that he's not, like, an all-star in 3 years. You don't know that. You don't know that, right? You can hypothesize, you can guess, you can estimate, but you don't know that. You don't know if, and also let me end this on a bit of a statistic, because y'all like stats. So there's a common thing. If you Google Scottie Barnes, Michael Carter Williams, there seems to be a really sizable portion of the internet that seems to believe that these two players are very comparable. Okay. Or that if Scottie's career turns into a disaster, that he will ultimately become Michael Carter Williams. Because, they both won Rookie of the Year. They're both tall guards. And apparently people, every time he struggles, there's this, look, I told you, he's just Michael Carter Williams. Let me tell you something funny. Scottie has more win shares than Michael Carter Williams by a lot, actually. I think Michael Carter Williams has 6.6 win shares in his NBA career so far. Scottie has like double digits already. I think he's 11 or 12. So he has almost double the win shares in 2 years that Michael Carter Williams has accumulated in his entire career. I believe Michael Carter's value of a replacement as a player is negative. He has a 42% effective field goal percentage. In order for Scottie to have a career similar to Michael Carter Williams, he would have to play 6 or 7 more years, averaging negative 0.7 win shares every single year for those 7 years until he's kicked out of the league. Basically, for Scottie Barnes to turn into Michael Carter Williams, he would have to have some sort of Space Jam situation in which all of his talent is zapped from him. Just an FYI. Yeah. Also, I'm really looking forward to this Heat Knicks series. I gotta tell you, I'm really looking forward to it. Like Jimmy Butler, Josh Hart, like some of the names and faces have definitely changed. But as a kid growing up in New York, I hated the Miami Heat. Like I truly hated them. And then ironically, when I left New York, I started to like the Miami Heat because I really liked, I really liked Alonzo Mourning and I really liked Dwayne Wade. And then LeBron went and I hated the Miami Heat again. And then Chris Bosh went and I really hated the Miami Heat again. Um, but I got to tell you, I'm like really looking forward to that series. There's so many storylines. Jimmy Butler against his old coach is pretty cool. Someone saying Heat culture is a real thing. Okay, so your nepotism for Barnes is sickening, worse than Nurse Van Fleet. And your spelling and general IQ for the game is sickening. First of all, nepotism is spelled wrong, and Van Vliet is Van Vliet, not Van Fleet. I mean, I don't know if, man, look, here's the problem. Like, when you're stupid, everything is a conspiracy, right? When you're stupid, everything's angering, right? Like, I gotta be honest, like straight up, like like if you're stupid, right? Like if you're really dumb, you go to Walmart and you like, why do pillows cost so much? Why does everything cost so much? Because, nobody bothers to explain inflation to you, right? Like everything annoys you when you're stupid. So, nepotism? Yo, it's not even the spelling. It's not you don't even know what the fucking word means. Not even how to spell it. Yo, you write this fucking comment every fucking chat. He's not a future superstar. Well, he's not fucking Michael Carter Williams. He's second in his class in win shares. You don't understand what win shares are any more than you understand what nepotism is. Like, look, here's the thing. There's a nice little quote to end this chat with. Don't argue with idiots because people from a distance can't tell who's who. People are going to see me arguing with you, and then suddenly, they're not going to be able to tell whether you're right or I'm right. I assure you, you're wrong. But, like, it is what it is, Look, you support the channel, you watch the channel, you hate watch, like watch, whatever. You think this is nepotism? Okay, hold on. Honestly, I feel like I need to explain this to you. Here's what nepotism... You're not delusional? Yo, bro, here's the thing. People who are... Okay. Greatest quote to end this. Do you know that when you die, the only people who suffer are others because you don't know you're dead? Right? That makes sense, right? You don't know you're dead because you're dead, right? It's the same thing when you're stupid. It's the same thing. 100% same thing when you're dumb. You don't know. Everyone else suffers because they have to listen to your blatantly ignorant, opinions about things, right? You're not delusional. Okay, cool. Look, I'm very realistic about Scottie. I'm looking at what I'm seeing, okay? I'm seeing the skill development. Rank Scrub, man. Thanks a lot for the super chat. Really. So do you think you could get an hour-long interview with Leo Routens from a Raptors podcast? In my opinion, he was told to shut his mouth and not speak his mind on who the core truly is. I can reach out to him. Yeah. I think I have his email. Yeah, I could reach out to him. I'll reach out to him. Look, I reached out to Becky's representation. I doubt that you can get that interview because I don't know anyone in her circle or anyone around her. But I do know people who know Leo Routens, so I'm pretty sure I could do that. I mean, ironically, the first question Leo and I are going to have is, how the fuck did I only score 1 point on you when I played you one-on-one? Okay, why? You know what I mean? It's like, why? What makes you think he's not him? I mean, you just keep saying it, and it's like, okay, he scored 15 points, but you don't understand points. You don't understand role. You don't understand anything, right? Chris Bosh scored 15 points. Do you know that? Like, as an all-star with the Miami Heat, he scored 15 points. You'll understand at some point that scoring and opportunity and role are very linked. Now, I'm not trying to sit here and tell you Scottie had some great season, but you're not going to tell me he's a bum. And you're not going to tell me that you know right now that a 21-year-old who won Rookie of the Year is a top 5 recruit. Like, literally, find me every McDonald's. Okay, here's a list for you. Okay, find me a top 5 pick who won Rookie of the Year, who is a McDonald's All-American, who is a 3-time gold medalist, right? Who is second in his class after 2 years in win shares that didn't become at least a 4-time All-Star. There's my research study for you. And when you're done that, go to dictionary.com and figure out what nepotism means. All right. Yeah, I'll send an email to Leo. Anyways, this Mark, whether Scottie improves next year or not, I promise you, you're the fool. He will improve. He'll be fine. But you know what? When he does improve, I need you to come on and apologize. I genuinely do. I just want to hear it. And then hopefully by that time, you'll tell me what nepotism means. Look, man, like, honestly, I'm gonna be real. Like, I'm not like some huge Leo Routins fan either. I don't hate him. I don't have any strong opinions about him. But yeah, he's a bit of an asshole sometimes, you know. And I wonder how many times he can say that's a 7-footer out there. Okay, so what? Like, okay, great. So, I mean, obviously, okay, that means you're gonna come on next year and apologize. Cool. All right. Man, you know better than Masai Ujiri. Come on, man. Yeah, it's totally not outside the realm of possibility. New system, new coach, new third year tends to be like a big boomer bust. Look, someone said to me the other day, they were like, yo, if Rob, like, if he doesn't improve after 3 years, you're gonna change your tune on him, right? Yeah. I mean, I'm never gonna stop supporting him, but I would definitely adjust. If he comes out next year and averages 15 points per game on the same efficiency or whatever, yeah. Yeah, that would be an incredibly depressing outcome. Unless there's massive injuries or something. Yeah, like, I would 100% be like, okay, we need to chill on the superstar stuff. Can he become an all-star? Because that's still in the realm of possibility. Okay? But yeah, like, I think he is aware that he did not have a great season. I think he is aware of the type of player he wants to be. I think he is aware of the work that needs to be done, and he's doing it, man. Yeah. Yeah. Charles says, what do you think we can do personnel-wise for shooting if we keep our front court of Pirtle, Siakam, and Scottie? Chances are the trio will be back more than OG, Fred VanVleet, and Trent, our best shooters. I don't... So, I mean, obvious answer is you get Scottie and Siakam to become much better 3-point shooters through an off season of just development. Number 2, shooting is sort of something that is cumulatively factored throughout a game. So my thought process would be that if Siakam is not playing 37 minutes next year, playing closer to 32 minutes, and then Otto takes some of those minutes, then you're automatically taking those 5 minutes of non-shooting out. Same thing with Jakob. I just think your starters play too many minutes, so if you replace them with really good shooters, you can get away with it, right? Like, Jimmy Butler doesn't shoot threes. Bam Adebayo doesn't shoot threes, right? So those are, I mean, he doesn't shoot threes well, right? So you can get away with some non-shooting if you complement it with beastly shooting. 100%, right? You totally can. But I do think that there are some gaps, obviously, because you do have a non-shooter. You do need to, like, the space, it's not even the shooting that's the problem, man. It's the spacing. There's a compounding effect here. Also, I do want to say that, I was looking at careers yesterday because I decided to do a deep dive into some of the older drafts, and man, the number of minutes that Luol Deng played for Tom Thibodeau and the sort of breakdown of his body when he got to the Lakers it was very telling. I mean, he led the league in minutes. I think there is a cumulative toll for most players. I would be very worried personally, and I'm very happy that Nick Nurse is gone for just one reason. It's like my biggest reason for Nurse being gone is I think that it would be very disastrous for Scottie, OG, Pascal, etc., even Fred, to continue playing the level of the number of minutes they were. It doesn't matter that you don't have a bench that you trust. You have to play them. There has to be some level of concern for the long term. I also think that, there is some credence to this idea of playing more minutes and having less effective shooting percentages. 100%. Like, you look at a lot of players who come off the bench and shoot blisteringly hot percentages, and then they go into the starting lineup and their load increases or the minutes increase or the defensive assignment increases, and you suddenly start to get 3-4% dips in their shooting effectiveness. And I'm like, that makes sense. Tired legs equals short jumpers. That always will make sense. So I wonder if the offense can get better just by simplifying some of the defense that this team is playing. They play so much switching, blitzing, scram switching. There's so much activity required on defense for this team to just be barely functional. And I don't get it. Like, personally, I don't get it, because, it's not like you're necessarily this sort of again, I brought it up yesterday, but this complete lack of appreciation for how connected defense and offense are is so telling in terms of the blind spots of this previous coaching regime, right? Like, you continuously work these guys into the ground, you play them heavy minutes, and yeah, there's a diminished returns after you. I think around the 32 to 33 minute mark, you start seeing diminished returns on the added benefit of playing more minutes. Obviously, you play a guy too few minutes and you play a guy too many minutes, you're going to see results on both sides. If you play a guy too few minutes, let's say you put guys in for 3-4 minute stints, well, it usually takes about a minute just to break sweat and, kind of get your feet underneath you and figure out the rhythm of the game. So if every single time you figure out the rhythm of the game, you get hooked, you're going to have a disproportionate number of your minutes relative to the number of minutes you're playing being warm-up minutes, and that's not good. Similarly, if you play guys too long, then the last few minutes of their stints are generally going to be less productive and less effective. It could answer for some of Pascal Siakam's fourth quarter shortcomings. It could also answer for some of his defensive shortcomings early on, because he's trying to save himself for a 37-minute game or 40-minute game or 42-minute game. It's just not realistic. Regardless of how well your conditioning is, it's just not realistic to play that way. Scottie brought up, having to take his conditioning to another level to get to the level that he wants to play at. Well, I think every player on this team would struggle with this level of workload and, some of the complexities. And then, obviously the shooting is going to be a consequence of that, in my opinion. Yeah, and JC saying, I keep getting recommended Becky Hammon videos on YouTube, hopefully a sign of things to come. Yeah, this has been a very interesting year, yeah, that's a really good point. D from North. There's a reason other teams' players play less minutes. Yeah, and people act like it's because other teams have beastly benches. Are you acting like we would play Trey Lyles or we play some of the players that other teams play off the bench, or that other teams wouldn't have played Thaddeus Young, 5-6 minutes or 10 minutes to spell Siakam and Scottie? They would, right? I mean, this trust element going away from your starters, and yeah, so regardless, my point there was that I wonder how many miles have been put on Siakam's body because of the minutes load. Now, luckily, he's not playing 82 games, and he's had several injuries over the last 3 years that have kind of kept him away from playing a full 82 game season, because you damn well know if he was healthy, Nurse would have played him into the ground for 82 games a season. So I'm kind of happy that the total cumulative load is still less than most players who are 29 years old in the NBA, who are all NBA, all All-Star level players. But still, you do wonder if like, yeah, it was just, again, in spurts, you see the defensive effort from him. In spurts, you see the burst and stuff. And I'm not surprised that he's tended to start seasons out so much better than he finishes them, right? If you think about it, right? Like, the year before we ended up in the bubble, he started out great. He started out really great. Like, it was incredible, the percentages and everything. Like, people were like, "Oh my God, this guy's way better than DeMar DeRozan. He's like the next Kawhi." Like, people were MVP chants and stuff. And this season, the MVP stuff was 8 games, boom, gets injured, and then it kind of just goes away, right? So, is he the guy who, closed the season, struggled sometimes, struggle on the road? Is he the guy who was, putting up 28, 8, and 8? Don't sleep on it. You know, it, I'm not a huge fan. Obviously, you know that. Like, I'm not some big like, oh, extend Siakam, build the whole thing around Siakam. I'm not like, but as a second option, shit. Like, you're not telling me like you're gonna put. You're not telling me you're putting Jaylen Brown in a completely different class than him. He's not in a different class. Like, I gotta be honest. Like, Julius Randle, Jaylen Brown, Lauri Markkanen, whatever. I just think these guys have like less minutes. So I think they're just a little bit more effective. I think the biggest, if you want my honest opinion, I think my biggest beef with this is that Fred is not a point guard. He's not a point guard. This just has to be addressed because it's so obvious to me that he's not a point guard and he's obviously a shooting guard. And, I remember watching that bubble game recently where, game 7 against Boston and he has like an open man and he doesn't give him the ball and he finds Serge open. He doesn't give him the ball and then he forces that fucking 3-pointer that just doesn't touch rim or barely touch rim or touch front rim. Was it an air ball over Grant Williams and it cost us a series? And you're like, yeah, why did Nurse drop that stupid ass play? Because Kyle Lowry, I think, was fouled out. But like every time he's been asked to like sort of lead, like it's just square peg, round hole. So if he's coming back, people often talked about Steve Nash, later in his career when he couldn't guard as well. Like he could just be like a gunner off the bench, like a really smart secondary playmaker. It wouldn't be as big a load. Maybe Fred could be the same, like maybe Fred can be a gunner off the bench. Maybe Fred can be like the best. Maybe Fred can be a 6th man of the year, I just don't see how, like I have 5 goals. I shared this on Instagram yesterday. I have 5 goals with this channel. Like really 5 points that I made all year. And I think a lot of them got through to the mass. Like the mass, like I sometimes, like, I'm not trying to say this channel has like some massive influence or whatever, sometimes you get 5,000 views, sometimes you get 24,000 views, whatever. But like, generally speaking, I realize that we are still small, like very small. We're not like influencing the world the way thinking basketball is influencing the world. And we're certainly not informing the world the way we're not informing Raptor fans to the same level that, bigger channels like Raptors Digest is. But I had like really 5 points that I really wanted to make all year. And I think, they've gotten through. Number 1, Siakam is not him. That was one point that I really wanted to make, that there was a gap between him and Butler, him and like that there was a gap between him and Shea. Because I swear to God, early on in the season, it feels like Raptor fans were not willing to accept that. Number 2, Fred's not a point guard. Fred's not a leader. Like, he's not a great point guard and he's not a great leader. He's still a hell of a player, a really good player. You should not want to lose him for nothing. If you're a Raptor fan and you want to lose him for nothing, I don't think you know what you're talking about. Like, you should not want to lose him for nothing. You also should not want to extend him for $35 million. So the truth lies somewhere in the middle, as it often does. But I wanted to talk about and expose some of the things that he was doing off court, how it was rubbing his teammates the wrong way. And that was a really big part of what I tried to do this past year as we built this channel up. My third point was that basketball is nuanced and that it's more than box scores. And I hope that most people in this community get that, Mark notwithstanding, that, look, I gotta be honest, like, I watch all sorts of basketball. I watch WNBA, I watch EuroLeague, I watch high school, college. I love basketball. It's just, my life is basketball. There's a reason why this channel is effectively called Pensari Basketball. It's not called Pensari Raptors. It's not called, Pensari Scottie Barnes. It's, it's called Pensari Basketball because basketball is really interesting to me, really fascinating on a multitude of levels. And I think as we get older, I'm 35 now, like as we get older in our lives, like we need things to exercise our minds, to think, to dig, if you don't use it, you lose it when it comes to your mind. So I wanted to extend my mind in creative directions with this thing. And basketball is a great way to do that. And I think when I'm turning on like a EuroLeague game, I'm seeing a play, I don't recognize the play, so I have to stop it, screen record it, break it down, try to see if I see another NBA team running that. That's very fascinating to me. Digging into numbers and stuff. So I guess I wanted to get past the box score stuff and the highlight stuff, because too often, like we look at a guy, 22 points per game, we check the highlight package, dunk, boom, superstar. It's so much deeper than that. Basketball can be so deep. So that was the third thing. The fourth thing was just trying to expose what the media was doing to Scottie, and that Scottie's genuinely right. I'm not trying to present Scottie as a saint. I'm not trying to say that he doesn't make mistakes. I'm not saying that he's a perfect player. And I'm not saying that he's the next LeBron James or whatever. I'm not saying that. I definitely think he's going to be a star, and I wanted to support that growth. And I would definitely agree that he had a not great year. Not a great year at all by his standards. But I so often this year when I'm watching the game and I'm just like, oh, what are they doing? That play was botched. This person didn't rotate. And I'm just like, I got my hands up and I'll look at the screen and he's got the exact same reaction. And it always made me feel like someone else is seeing it too. I'm so happy someone else is seeing it. I'm so happy someone else saw that pass that wasn't made. I'm so happy that someone else saw that cutter, I think he has a great mind for the game, right? Like really, cucumber liquor. What are you talking about, man? So I think that it was a really important thing to do that. And then the fifth point that I really think that kind of got lost in the weeds a little bit with this channel this past year was that I do believe in the youth on this team, and I believe in the people who put them in place. There's a lot of good young players, and take it from someone who looks at the draft every single year and who has a pretty decent knowledge, I would say, of all the prospects who come in every year. I'm not gung-ho over every young player. Like some people are just like, this guy's 20, he's going to be the next Michael Jordan. Like, I don't have that mentality. But over 20 years of being right, being wrong, getting guys way off, I've just developed a bit of a process to vet what makes a successful NBA player, from their attitude, professionalism, physical skills, basketball skills, to their role, to, just measurements. I just feel like the Raptors have a lot of these guys that could do well. And so many times, this team has had players who've done decently when they've left. It's not lost on me that there are several Raptors who've played in the playoffs this year. Norman Powell, bench player. Terrence Davis, bench player. Ish Wainwright didn't make the final roster. Yuta Watanabe, bench player who rarely played. It goes on and on and on and on. The truth is that, we have guys who check a lot of boxes and they haven't really been given an opportunity. And I guess a part of this channel's, approach was just trying to empathize with how a Jeff Doughton feels when he opens up the newspaper and reads Raptors don't have a backup point guard. I don't know. There's an empathy element to it for sure. And I wanted to support that and just say, false, they do. You have a coach who refuses to play him. And I thought that was important. So that's really been what this channel has been about for the last year. And in the coming year, I'm sure we'll do other stuff. I'm sure we'll interview some cool people. I'm sure that, we'll do cool videos. I'm positive that we'll do more lives. I'm sure we'll do some draft stuff. I actually wanted to do my own version of redraftables. So the Bill Simmons thing that they did with the Ringer pod. And I wanted to ask if there's someone who wanted to do it with me. I think it's just more fun if you have people, so maybe we can commit to something over the next week or so to redraft, several drafts and give our sort of picks, it will require someone who has a great deal of working knowledge about the NBA. And if I can't find someone who has a lot of knowledge about NBA history, maybe I just have to unfortunately do this by myself for now. But I would love to do like okay, let's redraft the 1996 draft. Who goes first? Who goes second? Who goes third? I think that would be cool. I would love to redraft, and I think, my goal has always been with all of this has always been to raise, our knowledge as basketball fans within this community. I just want to know that the people who listen to these videos generally have a better idea of basketball than people who listen to other videos. I just want to be able to provide that value back. So I'm just thinking about new and innovative ways to do that. And I think a redraftable series would be really cool. It would allow me to historically paint a picture of what the NBA was like back then. I think it would also give us a renewed perspective on this coming draft because obviously, there are some glaring overlaps between players who consistently went way lower or should have gone way higher than they did. Yeah. Who was Bench Mob 2.0? That's interesting. Agreed. Yeah, me too, man. Oh, by the way, Black Nubian, I got your email. Thank you so much for buying a Pendant's Pass, man, for your sister. I really appreciate it. Just wanted to say that face to face as opposed to an email. But thank you so much. Really appreciate that, man. Jeff Fan Club. Absolutely. Anyways, y'all, went 30 minutes over my scheduled time. You're going to have to stop paying attention to me when I say it's going to be an hour only because clearly I don't know how to manage my time and end up responding to Mark's comments. All right. Peace, guys. Have a good one.